Vou ajeitar pro YouTube.
Hey folks, this is
Aí, tá
Riker,
começando agora.
and welcome to the next Diablo 4 developer live stream update. I'll be your co-host. I'm a YouTube
Como é que
content
tá minha voz
creator
aí?
and
Não,
professional
pra
Tá
Diablo
escutar?
normal.
and I want to thank
Tá
the Diablo
normal
team
que
for
você
having me
normal,
here today.
sim.
We're going to be diving into some juicy topics, and we have with us some folks who will take us through those. We have with us...
Hi, I'm Joe Shelley. I'm the game director for Diablo 4, and for folks watching us here and keeping an eye on chat, please keep an eye on the cameras. If they start spinning end over end, you know we had a bad problem and we're not going to space today.
Fair. Okay, I'm Joseph Pipora. I'm the Associate Game Director for Diablo 4.
And I'm Adam Fletcher. I'm the Associate Director of Community for the Diablo franchise. So we have a lot to talk about today. We have Riker here. Thank you again, Riker, for joining us to be our host for this actual live stream itself. And we did want to actually do a few quick agenda items and so forth beforehand. Just a reminder to everyone that Diablo 4 obviously is coming out in June, and you can still pre-order.
Yeah.
We do have deluxe and ultimate versions available for pre-order, or you can pre-order just the base game itself. But the deluxe and ultimate versions actually give you early access, so there should be a QR code on screen if you want to pre-order for deluxe or ultimate versions of the game. Today, though, we have a ton to talk about. We expect this stream to be about 90 minutes or so, because we want to cover a lot of different topics, one being endgame, the other one being some class balance changes in regards to some of the beta feedback that we ended up receiving, as well as the dungeon feedback that we also received during our beta learnings that we actually posted last week. So without further ado, I'm going to stay quiet for most of the stream. You'll see me more towards the end. But I will pass it off to Riker to kind of start.
I'll be on Twitter the whole time. He's very busy.
Yes, I'm looking at chat.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll be looking at chat because we will be doing Q&A afterwards.
True.
But I will pass it off to Riker because obviously, Riker, you've had quite a journey in getting down here. And of course, over the past week, you've been able to play the latest builds of Diablo 4. And we'd love to get your take and kind of hear, like, how was it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So I've been waiting for Diablo 4 since years before it was ever revealed. I've been waiting so long, I'm literally transforming into Deckard Cain. I mean, look at me. So yeah, when you reached out for the chance to come to the offices, play the latest build, then getting to come here, getting to experience it, getting to talk to some awesome people who gave me awesome insight into the build, into the systems, and get to play with decked out characters, endgame builds, seeing all the synergies coming together with the items, the Paragon boards and everything. It's really been a blast.
Awesome. Good to hear. I know one of the first topics that we wanted to jump into was, I believe it was like talking a little bit more about the world tier. Capstone dungeons, I believe.
Yeah, because that's basically the gateway into all the other topics, right? Because we have the world tier system is like the different difficulties, and the capstone dungeons is how you unlock those and then get access to all that end game stuff. So I think we have some footage to show while Joe, you want to talk us?
Yeah, let's talk about this. So yeah, I guess the first thing we want to talk about here is when players are going through the base game experience, they're finishing the campaign, they reach level 50, the nightmare tier.
Acredito que vai ter muito mais coisa, porque tá vendo item único, tá vendo um monte de parada. Que não mostraram ainda no ancestral. As maestrias vão ter evoluções.
To that next world tier. Now, Riker, when you were playing, you had a chance to actually check out your first endcap dungeon, at least as part of this test. Like, what was your experience?
Até no trailer o Druida é fraco, mano.
The first endcap dungeon, all right.
Dá o hit, tira 10% da vida da caveirinha, coitado.
Veteran difficulty is too easy, crank it up. So, endcap dungeon, I think the first one, it's recommended level 50. I was level 45, thought I was a shot. Went in there, it was a humbling experience. That's how I discovered that, yeah, if you die down to repair your gear. So, hardcore players beware. I had to learn like boss mechanics, study, adjust my build, and eventually put my tail between my legs, go power up a bit more before trying it again. But then conquering it felt like a really great achievement. Very satisfying.
Melhorou muito, vai.
O que eu achei interessante que esse comentário foi do sistema de voo. Então, tipo, isso vai as masmorras e as coisas, as entradas únicas que você pode direcionar. É ser muito parecido com o sistema de mapa, pra fazer. Então, você pode botar dificuldade, começar a quantidade de drop e loot. Conseguiu entender, por exemplo?
Entendi, tu vai poder modificar as dungeons, né? Aqui, ó, estou mostrando agora o sistema de dificuldade, ó.
And then you're going to start to see sacred and ancestral items also begin to appear in World Tiers 3, and then particularly in 4. And also, in addition to those things, the world, of course, is becoming more dangerous as the players step into Nightmare and Torment tiers, World Tiers 3 and 4 respectively. Monsters can do more damage. They are going to be more aggressive. There's a number of changes. Joe, do you have any thoughts on like?
E os modos de dificuldade vão ser representados, os inimigos vão ter mais life, mais dano, os monstros mais agressivos, vai ser muito mais perigoso fazer os mapas e as dungeons.
Eu acho que faltou um pouco mais de informação nesse negócio da dificuldade, porque no beta, por exemplo, tinha o normal e o veterano. Só falava que o veterano era mais desafiador, mas não os bichos eram mais inteligentes. Mas não mostrava quanto que aumentava de dano, de vida, essas coisas, entendeu?
Eles deixaram claro que vai ser agressivo, então acho que vai ser aumentar, tipo, deixar os monstros mais curtos.
Mas claramente os monstros no veterano, eles usavam o skill 3 vezes mais rápido que os normais.
The monsters have certain cooldowns between their attacks. They have
tá vendo? Cooldown mais rápido de ataques.
Some projectiles have seeking, so they can home to some extent, and they have some logic about how they group up and how they decide which people to target. And so a lot of those different parameters we adjust as you go up in world tiers to make the monsters more threatening, because of course the players are getting more familiar with the game, they're getting more skilled, and they're also getting access to more tools in terms of abilities through.
Eles falaram que estão botando muita dificuldade para games, jogadores que têm mais conseguem desviar das coisas melhores, então vai ser difícil desafiar.
Não, com certeza. Eu lembro que eu tava jogando só no veterano. Aí teve só que tinha um bug, quando você desconectava e voltava, ele voltava no normal. E às vezes eu não percebia. Eu fui fazer o boss de uma masmorra com um bárbaro, eu literalmente fiz parado. Não fiz nada, só fiquei parado batendo e matei. Quando eu percebi, eu fui fazer de novo, no veterano, se eu ficasse parado eu morria muito rápido.
Stated in the difficulty descriptions, I guess I just glossed over it and I just expected more damage, more health. Yeah, I know how difficulty works. But I was starting to feel, oh, the world just seems more hostile, more aggressive. And that's when I realized, oh, there's a lot more at play in the increased difficulty here than just bigger numbers, which is nice.
There's one more thing I want to talk about with regards to World Tiers as well. And this is I'm very excited about this talk in general. I've been waiting to have conversations the audience to kind of convey some of the more interesting depth and complexity. So in World Tiers, you gain access to two new sets of itemization.
Só de reduzir o cooldown já é absurdo.
Items going to appear for you. And then World Tier 4, you gain access to ancestral items that can be dropped for players as they're going through those spaces. Now, with the players leveling up from 1 to 50, the items that you're getting from monsters that you're killing are going to be, the power is going to be based on their strength and level. So if you are, you're playing in the beta and you're killing level, 35 monsters for whatever reason, and you're going to be getting slightly more powerful gear as a result of that because the monsters are more challenging and they're going to be dropping better gear for you. But once you have reached level 50, and that basically that flow means that as you're leveling up and you're fighting more challenging things, you're going to continue to slowly upgrade all of your gear over time. You'll find a ring here, and a helmet there, a pair of gloves. That's great. That's how we want you to kind of get exposed to itemization systems as you're progressing through initially in the game. But once you get into World Tier 3, things change a little bit. So items that drop you have a chance to be sacred. Not every item in World Tier 3 is sacred by default. The higher the level of the creature that you're fighting, the more likely the chances that items dropped from that creature will be sacred in nature, or also based on the kind of content you're completing. But sacred items, when they drop, they drop at a very large range in terms of the power that they can have. So you could get into World Tier 3, you could kill...
Porque eu sou jogador de Diablo. Então, porque ele basicamente dá aquela barra que tu tem que carregar para que no final vai te dar um loot. Eu não sei que mecânica é essa.
Mas que ele falou, barra que tem que carregar para estar no final um loot.
Tipo assim, você vai matando os bichos, aí tem aquela... Eu não sei o nome dessa mecânica, ele citou, mas eu não sei o nome. Eu sei que é muito barra que tem que carregar, que no final vai dar mais loot, mais recompensa, também aumenta a dificuldade.
Deve ser tipo uma barra no Diablo, no 3, pelo menos, no Immortal, ele tem uma barra que você vai matando bicho, e conforme você mata vários bichos ao mesmo tempo, vai dando uma barra tipo, você já matou 50, 51, 52, 53, e no final dá um XP extra, quando você termina essa barra, quanto mais se acumular, entendeu?
Vai ter um loot, ele falou, o loot também vai aumentar a dificuldade.
Maneiro.
If you are level 50 and you get a really, really great ring drop, that's going to be good for not quite your build, but like maybe, maybe you're playing
a gente tá com a Fana, tá bom? O inscrito aqui do canal tá me ajudando aqui a traduzir algumas coisas.
And you say, okay, I want to give this to, you can hold on to it. That could be a really valuable item to trade. Because it could be that its eye power is such that it's like really good for a level 70 character, but the required level for the ring itself is level 50 because you got it at level 50. And that's going to raise with the course of time. We think that's going to be super fun for players to chase. And there's more of that as you get into the ancestral tier, but that's not all. I think the next thing we're talking about is actually legendary and unique items. So, all right. We've talked a little bit about legendary items in the past. I really want to focus on things that we haven't spent a ton of time discussing, but to give a general overview, legendary items in general are attached to like legendary powers. And these legendary powers, or reverse, legendary powers attached to legendary items. Legendary powers basically are designed to appear on multiple different slots. So, an aspect might appear on amulet, but it might also appear on gloves, it might appear on ring, or it might also appear on weapons. These things have a tendency to be in a lot.
Ih, deu algum erro aqui. Tá aí a Fana.
Different places based on the power itself. And we like this because it let players like extract aspects and powers from items and put them into other items that meet these certain criteria. It's fun because we want players to go and be chasing certain fantasies. It helps them kind of like hone in on certain kinds of builds and gets them excited about the potential of like kind of taking all these different Legos and kind of putting them together. Can I say Legos on stream?
Yes. Legendaries, yeah.
Legendaries is what I'm talking about. So once you get all of these legendaries together and you put them together, that's gonna be really, really fun. So that's part of the fantasy we think of legendary items. Did you actually get a chance when you're going through 1 to 50? There's only a certain number of these that are actually available. But when you get into World Tiers 3 and 4, more legendary.
Salve Intense, salve Giovanni, salve Gabriel, salve Ronaldo Silva, sejam todos muito bem-vindos.
A variety of legendary powers. I got a certain number of drops. Drop rates didn't feel out of control, but you guys gave me some pre-made characters as well.
Uma live especial de Diablo 4, eu tive que abrir, Giovanni.
Cool synergistic powers that came together to really make a build flow well. And I think my favorite power was
Prometeram grande anúncio para essa live. Talvez tenha classe nova sendo apresentada, galera. Vamos ver. Talvez o Paladino seja apresentado hoje.
Your true form.
Ele tá mostrando
um vídeo legendários aí.
Werewolf
all the time. Yep. Yes. Yes, you can.
Yeah, that's the next step, right? So unique items. So unique items only begin to appear when players enter the Nightmare tier. So once you're in World Tier 3, there's a low chance that some of the game's unique items will begin to appear for players as they're and they're very, very rare.
Só pela corzinha eu sei que é os únicos.
Chase items and opportunities.
Some
really important for build making. Some open up a whole different build paths and opportunities for players to go and
pois é, no Diablo 4 vai ser cheio de items.
Like what you suggest there, when you have experience trying to gather the werewolf, the ability to stay in werewolf effectively forever.
Todo mundo corre atrás desses itens e estão
really, really cool stuff. And there's more of these unlocked over the course of your level progression as well.
Os melhores itens do jogo, no caso.
Exatamente.
That's correct. Shaco does make a return. There's lots of opportunities for us to basically kind of pay homage to items that came in previous versions of Diablo, previous entries in the series. You'll see a number of different items make returns. Items like Grandfather, Shaco, obviously. You'll see a few familiar, and then a few familiar favorites, and then more over the course of the game's live development.
Also, this is a good way for people to kind of see the new font changes and so forth that based off the beta learnings that we actually ended up posting last week.
Yeah, we'll get more into the beta learnings later in the live stream. We'll go over them in a lot more depth. But yeah, absolutely. The font was a great example.
Pois é, Jefferson. Tomara que venha pros dois, né?
We added at least 20% more serifs.
Tomara que venha pros dois. O Diablo 4 tá garantido já vir esse ano. O Diablo 4, vamos ver se vem agora.
Seriously, people pointed out that the font, while highly readable, and we spent a lot of time thinking about, how the game is going to display on all kinds of different screens, different aspect ratios, TVs, right? And so we want the font to be highly readable in all of those situations. But it didn't feel as much like Diablo as it could have, and so we went back and looked for a font that was still highly readable, but had more of a Diablo thing. And it's just a great example of players pointing something out and us being able to react to it.
What's the next thing we want to talk about, Riker? What do you think?
Well, so we have all these legendary items. One semi-deterministic way to farm for them, Helltide. It's an activity where well, I guess you can dive into how exactly you can target farm specific item slots to hunt for specific unique items. And it's going to be one of the main endgame activities that we'll be partaking in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, once the player gains access to Nightmare Torment tier, they are going to Nightmare tier. They're going to start gaining. They're going to start seeing some of these new activities. One of them, which is Helltide. Helltide is the sky turns red, blood begins to fall from the sky, new monsters begin to appear. Everything is more challenging.
Essa skill foi nerfada, tá, galera?
Events are going to start showing up, and
a do raio que ele manda
as you're killing creatures when you're
nerfada.
in one of these Helltide areas, you're going to be getting what we call cinders. It's this new currency players are able to collect while they're specifically within these spaces. And this is great because you get to take these cinders, and as you're wandering through the overworld, you might be running on your other players. You might be like helping them do events together. Everyone's getting their own cinders as they go. You'll be looking for these Helltide caches you can see here. And these are great to your point about being able to target farm for certain kinds of items. So every one of the caches in the Helltide zone is actually tied to an item slot. And they all have different costs. So you look kind of like you'll be gathering cinders by playing within this space, trying to locate one of the caches that have the item type that you're looking for, whether like maybe you're looking for an amulet or looking for a ring. You know, maybe you're looking for a Shaco. So you're looking actually to go find a helmet cache and you want to keep trying to go after the helmet cache and the rare, desperate hope that you're going to get exactly the unique item that you're looking for, right? That's cool. We want to give you some of that opportunity, to give you that opportunity.
Eu entendi bem, ele estava falando que o mundo aberto do Diablo 4 vai permitir que quando você está fazendo uma dificuldade maior, você ter três recursos.
Is the idea that the player is
the players andando pelas áreas, você pode encontrar coisas secretas.
When the player's running around these cinders, they have the chance if they die, they lose about half their cinders. Every time they fall, they don't drop on the ground, they're gone. So you have to be very careful about like when you're looking to overextend.
Entendi. Então nas maiores dificuldades vão ter baús secretos que não tem em outras dificuldades. Interessante isso.
Exato. Ele falou exatamente isso das duas dificuldades. São quatro dificuldades, tá com duas.
Sim, a principal magia elétrica, Ronaldo, foi nerfada. Parece que ela não vai causar nem tanto dano como antes e não vai ter a mesma eficiência no boss, de ficar quicando várias vezes no boss, que era roubadaço. Eu sei, também era a build que eu criei de mago roubadaça, eles nerfaram essa skill. A principal skill de raio do mago.
You have to spend them. So if you see that the clock is ticking down, you're getting 5 or 4 or 3 minutes away from the end of the Helltide, you got to find yourself a cache to kind of deposit those things.
Yeah, absolutely. My experience, I first jumped into a Helltide event with, I think, 23 minutes left on the clock. So I start by, okay, I'm scouting out the different chests or caches to see, okay, which is the one that has the slot that I'm looking for, what are the different costs, and then I'm doing some quick math. Okay, I'm gathering cinders at about this rate per minute, I have this many minutes left. Okay, I think I could afford the most expensive, the weapon slot, and I got to backtrack to that place in order to get there. And then I died. And I'm like, okay, recalculating.
Yeah.
Okay, how much time do I have left now? Okay, so quickly. Yeah. And then I died again. And like, better luck next time. Well, another hour before the next one comes around, I'll have a better plan this time.
Now, granted, you can still get legendary items dropped.
Ele tá falando de calcular e o dano, não entendi.
Killing monsters, so it's not like if you lose those cinders, you lost all
Ele usou esses que ele tá usando para poder
it does take a little wind out of your sails if you just happen to get jumped at the wrong time. Again, another great opportunity for there to be players nearby when they're trying to help out in those situations.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I think is really cool about this is that these chests or caches, boxes with loot, awesome loot inside, right? You know, each time a Helltide appears, they're in different locations,
right?
So
as localizações desses baús vai ser aleatório, tá? Você está em diferentes localizações, não vai ser tipo, você encontrou se tu for lá de novo vai encontrar o mesmo baú.
You know, when you go into the Helltide area, it's useful to scout out and see where the caches are for the item spots that you're interested in. And then you can, you know, mentally remember, okay, here, I want to farm around here,
Mas
come back here.
Os altares de elite vão ser iguais, todo lugar.
And one thing I want to call out here, you know, you saw one of the caches on the screen earlier, you know, in some of our video that we captured for it. Now we did capture that with the
Mas ainda acho que vai ser forte ainda a build de raio.
So you can't see the icon above it, but there is an icon that says, in here there are boots.
That's correct.
So you will know before you open that cache what's in it.
And I mean, that's not all. I mean, there's other risks and dangers inherent in Helltide areas.
Agora, tem uma coisa, eles só ficaram comentando em não mostrar o gameplay ou na prática.
Eles estão mostrando bem pouco de gameplay, ao invés de... Eu achei que ia ser o gameplay acontecendo o tempo inteiro enquanto eles vão falando, né? E não só eles sentados falando. Havia 4 velhos sentados falando.
And it's also an opportunity to farm a special crafting material, right?
That's correct. There are craft materials like Fiend Rose and things that really are coming directly from Helltide encounters and those experiences. So you are looking to also get some high-tier weapon and item upgrades from going through these places.
Na teoria, eles praticamente eles vão ser o craft do Diablo 4 RNG. Aí você vai ter que ficar farmando especificamente os drops para conseguir fazer aqueles aspectos lendários.
Nightmare Dungeons. You want to talk a bit about that?
Ah, mas já
Lá no
foi...
Sempre
foi RNG, nunca teve, tipo, o bicho garantido que vai cair tal item. Nunca teve isso.
No Beta não tinha um negócio que tu fazia masmorra e tal e dropava o aspecto?
Não, mas aí o aspecto da masmorra, não é o item, entendeu?
Então eles falaram certo.
System for the later part of the game, right? And you're going to get sigils, and Joe's going to talk a little bit about this.
Eles vão tirar esse bagulho do aspecto garantido da masmorra?
Não, eles falaram que os atributos de item vai ser completamente aleatório.
Isso aí me foi.
Yeah, so first up, Nightmare Dungeons, very, very exciting system. Players haven't had a chance to play these
parece que eles bufaram aquela do Chunlight, dos raiozinhos saindo assim, aleatório, eles bufaram essa habilidade. Vamos ver como é que fica.
Which are primarily initially earned by completing Whispers of the Dead, one of our other overworld content
saindo, tá ligado?
Able to engage with. Now, sigils are really interesting in that they are tied to a level when you find them, which is going to affect the level of the monsters inside that space. They have various afflictions, which we've talked a little bit about in the streams in the past. These are going to modify the way that level rolls out. But Nightmare Sigils, when they are activated, after you collect one, is going to basically open up a portal near an existing side dungeon. And with in the pre-release version of Diablo 4 and additional seasons, we basically select a subset of all of the side dungeons in the game that can become Nightmare Dungeons for that period. So players become more familiar with a set number of these because they know that they can be populated with these Nightmare Dungeon experiences. So you might already know, whether it's Annex Acclaim or whatever it is, what the layout of a given dungeon might look like normally. But Nightmare Sigil is going to change that by introducing these new afflictions and then also
Eles nerfaram o imbuimento da Rogue, aumentaram bastante o cooldown, não sei quanto ainda. Vai ser difícil agora você ficar usando tipo 2 imbuimentos da hora e tal.
It might not be native to that dungeon, which is pretty cool in that we like the idea that players are going to have to kind of deal with these new different threats than what they're typically used to as part of that encounter. And there's a number of these other like greater afflictions, like we showed the Stormbane's Wrath, that disc thing that was floating around around you, and occasionally it just pulses out this really big, stunning, damaging effect. So
esse conteúdo que ele tá falando aí é como fosse, se eu entendi direito, é como fosse você adiciona conteúdo das coisas boas, das coisas isso vai aumentar a dificuldade e aumentar o loot.
É o sigilo, é igual as cartas do Fate of Exile.
Dealing with like more and more dangerous threats over the course of time. And this is a really great place, not only just to like earn experience and really push your build and make sure
ele falou que tipo, ele vai ter que soltar, vai ter aquele ritual que abre um portal lá do inferno, que pelo local do
Sim, esse portal do inferno é no meio da masmorra, parece um portal do nada, começa a sair um monte de bicho aleatório de outras masmorras, entendeu?
And then like this is an opportunity to show the actual upgrade.
Aumentar a variedade de inimigos.
It's actually up right now. What timing? So yeah, when the player reaches the end of a Nightmare Dungeon, they get to basically go ahead and take one of the glyphs they've been collecting over the course of their 50+ experience, and basically slot into
parece que todo personagem vai ter algum tipo de
and make that glyph even more powerful. These soft will go into your paragon board and end up being some of the single most powerful modifiers you can apply to your character, above legendary powers, and even in some cases, even above some unique powers. So it's really based on your build to be choosing, looking for a set number of these and upgrade them to exactly what you need them to do.
Não tinha esse negócio no beta não.
And so the sigils that we're getting.
A mecânica nova.
What I noticed is that if you get some afflictions that you don't particularly care about, we have the ability to salvage some in order to craft sigils of our own, right? I think it's a 4-to-1 ratio, is that right?
Yeah, just about. So you'll be able to get a lot of these different sigils by going through Nightmare Dungeons, completing Whispers, and through other content.
Sigil,
if you're finding sigils that you don't really want or don't really want to run, because maybe we're going to have like enemies inside are going to do additional lightning damage, but you don't have a lot of lightning resist on your build. Maybe you want to go ahead and like salvage that back at the Occultist. Take that down to its sigil dust and use that.
Esse revives a load é o número máximo que você pode reviver na masmorra?
This is for players to kind of like, you know, push themselves a little further. They can craft over the course of time. And it's another way to kind of like reutilize some of the sigils you might not be as interested in running from time to time.
Yeah, one thing I liked about the afflictions was it was making me make choices during the gameplay like two that I can speak
Pra
to.
ser nível de dificuldade
nightmare gates that we were
intenso.
just showcasing.
Eu acredito que não é nem exatamente porque tem difícil, porque você pode botar 8 pessoas lá por tempo. Então, você poder rever 8 vezes lá é o ideal para uma PT de 8 pessoas.
Or do I finish this fight first? I'm forced to make a decision, and I got to live with the consequences if I think, you know, maybe I should take him down, and then no, the fight becomes more challenging, and nope, I should have taken care of that gate first. Another one is, I forget the name, but it's some kind of blood cyst that starts to grow, and then if you just don't touch it, it eventually explodes in a huge area.
Yeah.
And it's either, okay, destroy it before it does that,
falando de
or get
mecânicas, por exemplo, nas duas tem umas mecânicas que você vai ter que destruir as coisas, não
it's like, okay, I thought I had time to get away, then I got crowd control, and then boom, one shot. So I like how it changes the dungeon experience depending on which of these afflictions that you get.
Parece que quanto mais difícil for a masmorra, mais mecânicas vai ter as criaturas, né? Que se explodem, causam poison, essas coisas.
That's true.
Sem contar o número de afixos dos elites, né? Quanto melhor, pior for mais muito difícil for a masmorra, mais afixos vão ter os elites também.
Actually, so this is a content type that you can actually fight up to creatures up to level 150. Actually, as part of the experience, based on how far you're able to push yourself as time goes on. So really excited about how far players can go with that.
All right, now you're talking about glyphs and the Paragon system, so let's talk more about those Paragon boards.
Oh, let's do it. Okay. Paragon boards. So we've talked about Paragon in the past. You know, we've shown pictures of the board just like this, and we've shown you things like, hey, look, like here's normal node, and this is the way that you're going to earn like 5 willpower.
É literalmente pegar o Patch of Exile e falar como é que a gente pode usar isso no Patch of Exile
there's a lot of other flexing things to deal with
mais
here. So there's basically 4 types of nodes to kind of like quickly reprise some of
Eu não vejo dessa forma, sabe? Sabe como é que eu vejo jogando Patch of Exile? Não parece que
that you can collect over the course of time.
Parece
Usually they're like a little bit more difficult to find a direct like version of items. So
tem atributos básicos que também são pontos menores. E tem uns slots maiores que você pode botar atributos, unidades, atributos bem distintos lá dentro. Então, literalmente, na versão que eu vejo, é a mesma coisa da coisa do Patch of Exile. Mas tá bom,
but then there are rare nodes.
Mas 8.5% de Kraken Energy.
Here, okay, so there's some
aí tem as
information
partes
here.
mais
Rare nodes have a pretty powerful effect right off the bat. You know, but then on top of that, there's a bonus effect down below that you can sort of see. Where on this one, it is, another 60% damage to elites. If you reach a certain amount of dexterity for your character. So the point here is that like rare nodes on their own, which there's about 10 or more per board. Rare nodes are already pretty powerful generically. But then on top of that, if you were able to hit these thresholds
tá vendo? Se o personagem tiver 260 de destreza, ela ganha mais 16% de bônus de dano em elite, chegando a 48% de bônus de dano em elite. Ou será que já está contando o bônus? Já está contando o bônus. Seria 16, em cima seria 16 e com esse bônus de destreza você consegue mais 16.
Through rare nodes, whether you want to engage with the legendary nodes or not. This is a really important thing. One other bit about this, just because it's easy for me to forget about, is that when you're going from Paragon board to Paragon board, like in the first board, this might be the cost. But then when you're looking at the second board that you're progressing through, those requirements are actually going to go up. So it's not in your interest to go like run from board to board, just unlock as many of these as you can directly through that way. You need to spend a little bit of time as the board and pick the ones that you really want, because the next board you unlock to get more rare nodes of different types. Those will be a little more expensive to unlock those bonus effects.
The thing I think is really interesting about these is when the way that I look at the board, right? When I open a Paragon board, the first thing I do is go and look at the nearest rare node.
O passe de batalha vai ser $10, né?
Where I'm starting, right?
O passe de batalha do Diablo vai ser $10.
For those bonuses.
Eles falaram isso?
And then I start looking at the
falaram isso.
I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm pretty
$10
close to
do
the
passe de batalha, galera.
here through my gear. Are there
Esse refound, refound é o ponto que você gasta para tirar o efeito, é isso?
Exatamente. Não, tu pode tirar um ponto, igual na árvore de passivo.
Então, é refound, né?
The normal nodes actually become
40 mil para tirar um ponto só.
To turn on these bonuses.
Exatamente.
Absolutely.
And também o cara tem 6 milhões de ouro ali, ó, tá vendo?
And then we're going to get back to normal nodes in just a second.
40 mil nem é
tanto. Then we have our legendary nodes. So every one of the boards for each of the classes has a legendary node somewhere on it. And these are really, really powerful powers like you'd expect. They are a legendary power effectively unique to the Paragon board system
Eu acho que futuramente vai ter uniões aí de várias empresas e vão criar um super mega MMORPG que todo mundo vai querer jogar, tá ligado? Mas esse com certeza vai durar aí talvez por uns 10 anos. Pelo menos 5 eu garanto que o Diablo 4 vai durar. Olha esse efeito que da hora.
Cara, mas tipo assim, tem localização, 50 pontos no passo de batalha é muita coisa. O Diablo 4 tem localização, velho. Cobrar pelos R$27 no passo de batalha, cobrar 50 e pouco, 60 pontos no passo de batalha, é foda do brasileiro.
Ah, mas é só skin, mano.
Nearby nodes at the same time. As I mentioned before, those can be leveled up pretty high. They continue to grow the radius of the affected nodes as you level up through certain tiers. So they can affect larger and larger areas. And the boards are not symmetrical in nature as you're progressing through. Because the player can rotate their board and choose which gate they actually want to enter from. You have to like kind of choose from board to board where are the sockets on this board. Are they near the stats I really want for this glyph?
Dá pra você girar esse quadrado, cara, da hora.
Dexterity nodes within range of the glyph effect. And it's going to do additional critical strike damage, whatever it's going to do for me as a result. That's a really important choice to make because all of the boards have different configurations, different socket locations, and different things near those sockets.
O Pedro que dependendo da sua classe, você começa em lugar diferente.
How does it matter? Like, how does it feel to do this relative to the rare nodes you might need on
Isso eu não sei dizer, mas eu acredito que tu pode escolher o quadrado que tu vai começar e depois ficar girando e segurando a forma que você quer. Tem um aspecto não, aquele bloco lendário com quadrado, então vai ficar
different paths to the Paragon board, different decisions to make, even if all their skill choices are identical.
Então, não necessariamente só skin ou animizando, é só cosmético, né? Pode ser skin, pode ser moldura, pode ser abertura de game, mas é só coisa que não influencia no gameplay.
É o que todo mundo espera, né?
Não, o que eles garantiram.
That's right.
One thing I found really cool about the Paragon system that
eu acho que vai ser isso, eu acho que dependendo da sua classe, começa num lugar diferente da árvore de habilidade. Tinha um símbolozinho ali que eu acho que é a sua classe.
Fantasy, playstyle. And it all revolves around that central or off-central legendary node, and then the rares kind of support that same theme, and it extends to the blues. So like on a necromancer, like, oh, this board is like the pure summoner fantasy, and this one is the blood mage. And looking at it that way really like made it very cool for me to be able to explore. Okay, I can merge these two together. I'm going to go like bone and blood
que melhoram skills específicas do seu personagem, ele tá falando, né?
That specialization.
Yeah.
Ele tá falando mais do
220 Paragon points for people to have by
pra você se especializar, né?
We want those choices to feel like they've got meaning individually. Players can respect them for those choices if they want for gold cost. We want to be able to play with this system and be able to like kind of experiment with different ideas as they go. But
diferente, animizando, diferente.
Like that, the choices they made for the 220 matter a great deal to their overall performance.
Eu boto minha mão no fogo que não vai ter pay to win Diablo 4. Podem me cobrar.
What are we talking about next?
Well, I guess at this point we can talk about the beta learnings.
Pode cobrar, galera.
We had a beta, the community gave a lot of feedback. And you folks took in that feedback, digested it, and transformed it into actionable change in the game. You want to talk to some of the things that were changed?
Yeah, I keep saying we're going to talk about that. Now is the time. So let's start out with looking at some of the class changes that we did. So there's a lot of text on this screen. You've had an opportunity, if you've been following along, to check out our blog that documents a lot of the changes that we were able to make as a result of feedback from players in the 2 beta weekends.
Eu já fiz vídeo falando exatamente sobre essas notícias aqui.
We get a lot of
data, os buffs e nerfs que fizeram nas classes. Melhoraram muito o dano dos mascotes do druida. Fizeram muito mais fracos os mascotes do necromante para eles morrerem mais. Decrease damage of chain light e reduce eficiência against boss, tá vendo? Reduziram o dano e a eficiência nos boss. O dano da skill e reduziram a eficiência no boss do sorcerer, do raio. Agora, esse é roubado. Bárbaro tem 10% de dano reduzido garantido já adicionado sem botar ponto em lugar nenhuma. Ao imbuimento, skill Raven cooldown increase. Aumentaram o cooldown das skills de imbuimento do Rogue. Teve um nerfzinho, mas ela ganhou 2 buffs, cara. Nas skills de subterfúgio e nas passivas de... Em algumas passivas de multiplicador aí da Rogue também tiveram um buff.
Just flat, no matter what choices you're making as a barbarian, and that's to account for some of the ways the barbarian has to get up and close.
Pode confiar, Animizano, pode confiar.
They're sort of weapon-heavy spec. We also identified elements of the druid that
todos os ultimates do druida tiveram cooldown reduzido, isso é da hora.
In fact, I think Riker, you got to play the druid a little bit.
I did, yeah. So honestly, when I first saw the patch notes, I was like, oh, I was hoping the druid would have gotten a bit more love with regards to
diminuíram o dano dos corpos explosivos do necromante.
But then I played an endgame build of
cara, o necromante só foi nerfado, só teve um buff do necromante que você podia escolher não usar mascote e usar passivas ao invés de usar mascote. Eles melhoraram essas passivas para quem não quer usar mascote.
The full build together.
Realmente eram muito fraquinhos.
I went into this week with a certain class favoritism. I had Rogue, I had Necromancer, Sorceress, Barbarian, and then Druid in dead last. I'm completely confused now. I think Druid might be my favorite now.
Só porque as classes estavam muito quebradas e pesava desse equilíbrio, né?
The classes again. Another thing that we did in terms of the melee classes is we took a look at bosses and monsters, in particular their attacks that
esse negócio que eles falaram, melhoraram a melee classic, né, que é o bárbaro.
It feels like there wasn't a way for
melee a jogabilidade, tipo, é difícil eles falarem e não executar, entendeu? Uma coisa, dá um exemplo, você tá batendo naquela frenesia do bárbaro, mas você não consegue clicar com o bárbaro para se movimentar, desviar de um ataque e aplicar uma ação de uma skill.
Tá chiando muito seu microfone, tá chiando muito.
Melee class is sometimes choosing between taking damage,
dá uma olhada aí.
because even with the case of a projectiles originating in many cases from the monster, so you have less time to react in some cases.
Skill não é exatamente a skill do personagem, mas sim a jogabilidade do personagem, por exemplo. Uma frenesia batendo com de repente tu quer cancelar a tua ação e desviar, mas tu ainda tá no meio da tua skill.
Now, this also affects the Necromancer class, because you might notice that we had a note here that states that summon minions will die.
Não é só melhorar as skills de melee.
Entendi. Isso era um problema mesmo. No Diablo 4, esse lance do tipo, tá usando uma skill, aí tu quer parar a skill pra fazer alguma coisa, não para. Eles mudaram isso, foi isso?
And the Necromancer pets, you know, as a theme of this sort of
várias vezes eu vi, tipo, eu tô marcando alguma skill de necromante, usando, aí eu quero cancelar, fazer outra coisa, primeiro ele termina de usar, aí depois faz outra coisa. Não cancela no meio do caminho. Isso eu acho ruim.
We want to make sure that there are plenty of corpses, so you're not going into a boss and running out of, like, oh, I don't have any pets and I'm a pet builder. We certainly want to make sure that you have pets available, but we want them to be kind of coming back from time to time. So,
eles melhoraram o charge bolt do necromante, aquela que sai o raiozinho, aumentaram o dano e diminuíram a mana, vai dar pra castar muito mais.
We also took a look at cases where there were abilities that felt unfair for pets. Where there's just like a huge damage in a huge area, and maybe it's no problem for a player to get out of it, but trying to micromanage your pets to get out of this.
Micromanage an army of skeletons around, yes.
Tem uma skill do bárbaro que ele bate com 2 machados. Agora, se tu bater no alvo que tiver atordoado ou caído, recupera a mana inteira. Então, tipo assim, conseguiu atordoar um alvo, fica usando 2 machados o tempo inteiro sem gastar mana.
Make sure that managing your minions to some degree is part of the mastery of playing a necromancer.
Não,
and that, like, when skeletons go down, you need to accommodate that. Make sure you have corpses that you've been generating.
Isso aí eu acho que é mais pra banquear o PVP, entendeu? Porque tipo, quando
você tá no back it's definitely part of the fantasy of the necromancer class is needing to resummon, to your point, these kind of disposable soldiers that are supposed to be helping you. So we want to make sure that continues to hold true, but not to a point where like an army necro can't go fight bosses. That's obviously not what we're trying to build with any of these changes, of course. We just want to make sure that the necromancer does get a chance to engage with those parts of the mechanics.
Now another...
And I did get to play the Summoner Necro, and I was summoning my minions regularly, so it was something that was a continuous part of the gameplay, but I never found myself in a position where, oh, I'm out of minions, I'm out of corpses, So the corpse generation rate it felt good. I'll admit that passive minions is not my favorite playstyle. I would love the ability to direct them, but for what you intended to accomplish, I felt you did.
Yeah, so, one of the other areas of feedback.
Agora, obrigatoriamente, jogando de necromante, você vai ter que pôr passivas de gerar corpo. Tem uma passiva do necromante que quando você bate no boss, você tem tantos % de chance de gerar um corpo. Eu nem usava essa passiva, meus mascotes não morriam. Eu matava o boss inteiro sem perder o mascote. Agora vai ser obrigado, porque os mascotes parece que vão ficar menos resistentes, vão morrer com mais facilidade. E aí, como o boss geralmente não invoca bicho, morreu, tu não tem mais corpo para invocar caveira, para invocar os bichos. Agora, você com essa passiva, só batendo, tu vai criando corpos, e quando ele morrer, você invoca. Tem a passiva também no Golem, e ele faz o alvo bater nele, e aí apanhando, ele vai gerando corpos. E aí vai servir também. Salve, Nagata, bem-vindo.
Um jeito muito mais fácil de equilibrar isso, era só colocar os outros minions do
my favorites. Barbarian now was my second favorite after being my fourth. Again, yeah, the melee playstyle I felt gelled really well with the high-level Barbarian. It all came together. I didn't feel I was being punished for being melee, constantly crowd-controlled, or inability to gap close. He had his spears to bring enemies to me, the lunging attack to close the gaps, and a good toolkit to deal with everything.
So, the last thing I want to note on classes, of course, is that there are a few other changes beyond what you're seeing here. I think, some people called out Hydra changes. We made a lot of small changes to classes. There are also some cases like legendary powers. We updated legendary power effectiveness, which is sort of vague, but it's really just that there are a bunch of small details, and we're sort of tweaking them. The other thing I want to talk about is dungeons, right?
Yeah.
So we got a lot of feedback from players that there was a lot of running back in dungeons, and there were really two ways that we wanted to tackle this. First off, of course, if we have a situation where you're running back, we have a system that causes monsters to ambush you to make sure that it's not just running through an empty space. So we added more ambushes. But secondly, and this is really the more effective aspect of it, we changed the layout of dungeons and where objectives were located in the dungeon.
Agora não dá mais pra ficar repetindo.
Look at this.
Não é exatamente isso, é porque não reclamaram que tu entrava no voltar,
no último vídeo que eu fiz, já falaram sobre isso. Eles mudaram a localização das paradas para ser no mesmo caminho do objetivo.
Exato, aí tá dando então um exemplo aí de como você vai finalizar uma dungeon.
Antes eles ficavam fora dos caminhos. Agora eles vão botar tudo no meio, dentro do caminho para você, só seguindo, você finaliza a dungeon sem precisar ficar vasculhando a dungeon inteira. Isso é um saco no Path of Exile também. Ficar toda hora um labirinto. And then you have to run back. It's a dead end, and then you have to run back down that hallway. So we changed the layout for customize like this.
Right.
So you can see that the objectives
é tudo no mesmo caminho, só vai dar a volta e pronto, pega tudo no mesmo caminho.
Icons there on your screen are along the main path of the dungeon, and
aí, se você é o tipo de jogador que gosta de vasculhar a dungeon inteira, beleza. Mas se você é o cara que só quer ir em frente, você também pode fazer, entendeu?
The map is fogged, you haven't explored it yet. But it's set up in such a way that as you're exploring through the dungeon, you're going to naturally encounter those objectives along your way, and so you're not going down and then having to backtrack a long way.
Yeah, and in our objective view, this was.
Galera, deixa o like, ativa o sininho, se inscreve no canal.
This is good. But no, it's important. Like we want to make sure that as you're progressing the space, you are naturally coming across these objectives in a simpler way, as opposed to you need to kind of wander and kind of backtrack a lot more as part of that.
Yeah, and in fact, we identified a number of dungeons that got this feedback in beta. And we also
mais exemplos. Essa é que é o da prisão.
We also want to make sure that Nightmare Dungeons have this. We address this for Nightmare Dungeons as well because it's a key replayability system, as we were just talking about earlier. This is another example. Cordragon Barracks. It's another dungeon that we saw a lot of feedback and screenshots from beta, where you can see that the objectives are set up such that clearly you're going to have to run back all the way back through that long hallway. You're going to spiral around. You have to go out. You have to explore out from those spirals, and you can end up getting confused and running back. Because the other thing that happens here is that if you've run to an objective and the next thing that you have is back along a path that you know about already, then why wouldn't you just run back along that path that's empty of monsters? It's not fun. It's more fun to kill monsters, but it's more efficient than exploring some unknown that might or might not lead back to it, right? So that's a key part of these layout changes as well. And if you take a look at the next shot here, you can see how we rearranged the objectives in Grande.
Modificar a dungeon inteira para fazer o bagulho.
Now, these aren't the only changes that we made. There's some other things we did to actually just to straight up regular objectives. So there's things like, there are some dungeons where the players are asked to kill all the monsters inside a dungeon space. And in those situations, we've made it so like once the players reach a certain threshold of monsters they've killed, rather than saying like, there are potentially as many as 50 zombies in this cave. After the player has killed 49 zombies, they might still be normally looking around in the last corner where a zombie is kind of like hiding in a closet someplace, right? In this situation, instead, once you reach a certain threshold of zombies that you've killed, now they actually begin chasing you down. They start looking for you in that situation, such that you don't need to go crawl through the entire space and explore every inch of unexplored area in that dungeon just to find the zombies. Some of them are going to come after you in those situations, which is a great change to make it a little bit easier to engage with those things. And then there's another one, like we have features or dungeon objectives where the player is asked to go and collect like anima, which are just these objects, they're like these motes of energy that drop on the ground when you kill certain kinds of monsters. Sometimes you need to go and gather a whole bunch of these things and then bring them back to another area to deposit them. Sometimes it opens a door, might summon a boss, all kinds of things that we do with this. But in these situations now, when players are collecting this anima when they're running around the dungeon trying to find all these creatures and do these things, you're going to also gain various buffs by picking these up. You're going to gain some resource back for your class. You're going to get some other things. It's actually really great. When you actually deposit these things, you're going to get a health potion. So there's lots of things we're trying to do to make sure that those experiences help speed you up and feel great to engage with, while you're also going through a lot of layout changes that Joe just talked about.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed out kill all monsters, because players rightly identified a couple of key problems. Like first off, with kill all monsters, of course, if you're having to go and hunt down one of those monsters, that's effectively backtracking. And the other aspect of it is that the sort of intensity curve, the excitement in the dungeon is going down. If you're backtracking through a bunch of empty space, and then when you get there, it's not going to be an exciting moment.
Ficar fugindo para lá e para cá, procurando monte de objetivo espalhado no mapa.
It's going to feel sort of
ficar perdido na duna. Só vai seguir caminho e pronto.
It's one spider.
Colocar ponto capacidade. Você matando o jogador, abre portal para
Diablo 2 feel and so forth.
E na frente de cada dos colocam um iPhone. Eles querem deixar o jogo em mundo aberto para evitar que outros voltem também.
Well, yeah, and the other thing I like about it is that it increases the intensity at the end of the dungeon, right? Because you have the monsters.
Não, o portal no final de todas as dungeons é obrigação, cara. Isso tem que ter em todas as dungeons.
But what was your
Terminou a dungeon, tem um objetivo, aparece um portal e você vai pro início da dungeon. Pra entrada, tem que ter isso.
I'd often, in a dungeon, at some point reach a point where I'm like, okay, I have to run back or I have to go look for a monster. And with these changes, I don't think I ever had one of those moments, or at least, I'm not going to say there was zero backtracking, but there wasn't enough that it would have come up as an issue that I would have complained about. I know some people, say, oh, suck it up, backtracking has always been part of Diablo, it's part of the game. But the changes made hasn't made the experience linear. It's not like, oh, now we just have one quarter to go down. As you were saying, now if you do go on a side path, there could be things to run into, but just overall, everything from an experience standpoint just flows a lot better.
I know with beta learnings and everything that we took in from the community and we posted on the blog, we actually had a big question in regards to dungeons and resetting dungeons and how that actually works. And I do want to take some time for you guys to be able to clarify a little bit, because there's tons of questions. And then we tried to clarify, and I think we made it worse. So we're going to...
Let's re-clarify the clarification.
Exactly.
Yes, so the reset dungeon button, right? So we added this button earlier in development when there wasn't an easy way for dungeons to reset naturally. In fact, the way we added it led to some undesirable secondary effects.
Eles estão dizendo que você pode recarregar às vezes fazendo algumas vezes, mas tem alguma coisa que eu não entendi que ele disse. Mas vai ter tipo assim um contra você ficar agitando dois, eu não entendi o que ele disse. Não, a dungeon, por exemplo, você terminou a dungeon, você pode resetar ela e fazer ela de novo, atrás de algum item que você queira. Mas parece que tem algum contra você fazer isso. Eu não consegui entender isso.
Ah, sim, parece que vai ter uma limitação. Eles querem evitar que os jogadores queiram upar somente fazendo uma dungeon. Aí o cara entra numa dungeon, tipo, escolhe uma dungeon fácil pra ele. Aí ele vai e faz a dungeon. Aí acabou, ele faz de novo, e vai pegando level. Geralmente o cara quer jogar hardcore, ele quer jogar assim. Ao invés de fazer a história e pegar dungeons mais difíceis, ele quer ficar fazendo a mesma coisa pra upar logo, pra já ficar muito forte, pra fazer os próximos objetivos. Então não joga hardcore, pô.
For a period of about 60 seconds, about 30 seconds of matchmaking and 30 seconds of cleanup. Or if it's partially completed, like maybe you got halfway through and you're like, you know what, I have to do something else. I'm going to go, you know, kill a world boss, or, you know, I want to do something else now. Then it'll take a little bit longer to reset. It takes about 150 seconds, but it'll still reset naturally pretty quickly. And the other case here is that you've got maybe you're doing the dungeon and there's some particular objective in the dungeon or side quest in the dungeon, and someone, one of your friends joins and they want to do that side quest too, right? But maybe you've already completed it in this dungeon. So you can also hop out of the dungeon, which you can use through the Leave Dungeon button right in the UI as well. It does have a short cast time, so
not as quick, yeah.
But it's right through the UI. You can do it from anywhere. You know, invite the other person to the party, to your friend to the party, make them leader, hop in, you'll get a fresh dungeon as well.
Yeah, so hopefully that clarifies. You can still reset. Like resetting dungeons is still a thing in D4. It's just
salve Gabriel, seja bem-vindo.
Essentially, so you just have to wait a little bit longer for the dungeons themselves to reset. And I did want to go over two two specific changes that we also obtained through beta that we didn't actually record on the blog. One you actually tweeted about, which was about ultra-wide screens,
yes, and
being able to control cast distance and so forth, and with specific abilities and whatnot. So people who are using ultra-wide or mega ultra-wide screens wouldn't be able to essentially cast to the furthest corner of their screen and be able to use abilities in that type of way. And then one other thing that we did notice during beta, which was world boss encounters, and how players would actually complete a world boss encounter and then go back to town and then find another way of being able to, in that same window, go through another world boss encounter to obtain multiple opportunities of grabbing loot, which is something that we also did address through the beta learnings that we received from players. So
now I'll point out that
the
first
Diablo 2, eles querem trazer pouco sobre isso.
So there's additional incentive.
Querem misturar o Diablo 2,
like, there's less incentive to try to find a way to kill the same boss 10 times. But you certainly will get some rewards from that.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not the exact rewards or a clone of the rewards that you got from the first kill themselves. Great. I know we ended up learning a ton from the community in regards to the beta. Obviously, you guys got to hear a little bit about the endgame systems within Diablo 4. We do have a cool... What's this?
Is it time for a surprise?
It is time for a surprise. If you've been hiding on the internet and have not seen Ron Ferguson make very
não teve muita novidade até agora não. Tudo que eles falaram já saiu em entrevistas e tal.
Of the actual broadcast, I would say. So happy to announce that we've been hearing a lot of feedback from players about wanting to experience more Diablo 4 and check it out, you know, before the game's release in June. And so on May 12th through May 14th, we are going to be hosting a server slam event where all players within Diablo 4 or who want to play Diablo 4 can jump in and actually check out the game again. This is a really important weekend for the team and the dev team here because we need as many people to really log in, check out Diablo 4 and play through the game. Because we need to test out our servers some more before we actually launch. Joe, I know you have a lot of
Ele falou serve João, teste de
want to need an emphasis towards this specific
galera.
weekend.
Será que vai ter mais beta, mano?
Yeah,
Acho que é isso.
First off, you know, all of the changes that we just talked about in this live stream will be in place on the Server Slam.
Yeah, so huge news
Deve
right
ser o
there.
fim de semana, maio. Vê aí se é fim de semana, maio.
The
Dia 12 a
changes that we
14.
made from beta,
Acho que é isso mesmo, galera. Mais beta que vai rolar agora em maio.
That weekend on May 12th or May 14th.
That's right. And the other thing
Será
I
que
want to
dessa
point
vez
out
vão
is that we recently
disponibilizar o
announced
late
that
game? Não
that
sei.
we've gone gold, that Diablo 4 has gone gold. And that means that, and that's, we got all of those changes from the
Quarta-feira até
beta
sexta, o Henrique
we
falou.
did tons of, you know, we learned a ton of stuff in terms of our servers, in terms of server configuration, making sure that we were fixing bugs. We deployed hotfixes during those 2 weekends. And so we were able to really improve our confidence for, you know, for launch through that. And that's why
Eu tô até voltando aqui para entender exatamente o que eu disse sobre
so
esse
confident
vídeo.
in announcing that we've gone gold. Now, the purpose of this weekend is to slam those servers, right? Really make sure that everything is exactly perfect for launch because that's
Olha, ele
what's
disse,
important to us.
todos os jogadores
We want players to have a good
vão poder
experience
rostear,
day one.
vai ser rosteado e todos os jogadores vão poder jogar dia 12
So, come slam our servers.
Cortou, os jogadores vão poder
Of
rostear.
course, this is
Não,
very
eles vão
helpful for us.
rostear o servidor.
It's helpful
E todos
if you
os
want to play a day
jogadores vão
one.
poder jogar dia
It's helpful
12.
to the
to
Diablo
everyone.
4 community
But-
to come help us slam our
Então novo
servers.
beta
But
agora. Novo
That's
beta dia
not all
12 de maio,
that's
galera.
not the only reason to do it. When
12
you
é que o mês está
participate
cortando porque
in
está
the
atrás da minha
Diablo 4
câmera, mas é
service,
maio.
You're going to have another chance to
vai ter
earn the
recompensas.
rewards from the first 2 beta weekends. So if you didn't get a chance to play because maybe you were traveling or for any other reason,
Vai ter novos
you have another
títulos,
chance to
ó.
get your Beta Wolf pack cosmetic.
Vai ter mais uma
and
chance de você
two
ganhar o
titles.
pack do Wolf, aquele lobinho que fica carregando as
In addition to
costas.
that, we've, you know, for this Server Slam weekend, we've set the level cap to level 20. We've adjusted the legendary drop rates to be consistent with what you'll see on live, rather than the inflated drop rates that we had in the first 2 beta weekends, which were there to make sure that we got plenty of testing.
Boa
on our
tarde,
legendary
Vena.
power.
Tô vendo, tô na TV.
And
Salve, Marcos
on top
Fox.
of that,
Caraca, maneiríssimo,
you're
mano.
gonna
Mais um
have,
novo beta. Acho que
48
pelo
hours
visto vai ser igual antes, né? Só até level
slam these servers,
25.
right? Now, during this time,
Recompensa tudo de level
Ashava
20.
is going to spawn starting about 24 hours after the servers go up, and then every 3 hours after that. So you're going to have, I think it's 9 opportunities to fight Ashava. Now, if you get to level 20 and you kill Ashava while you are level 20, so max level in this test, in this period of time,
what level is it though?
20.
It's 20. So you got to be level 20.
Yeah.
To get
don't show up in the Ashava at level 5 and think you're going to get this.
Yeah, expect you'll get the reward.
But what you're going to get is this Cry of Ashava mount trophy.
Esse
which is,
beta é pra todo
exclusive to
mundo
this,
ou só quem
Server
comprou o
Slam
jogo?
weekend. You can see it here
Ele
on,
disse todos os jogadores de Diablo
Trophy
4.
there and that horse's hip on the saddle there. Very nice. Oh wow.
Olha essa
sweet. Let's
montaria,
figure
que
that out.
maneiro,
That's
galera.
awesome.
We basically
Oh my God.
cut a horn, part of Ashava's
Maneiríssimo,
horn
hein?
off, and you know, added some gilding and some nice metal work there.
Vai ter outro beta,
And
Atos.
of
Vai
course,
ter outro beta.
mount trophies in Diablo are cosmetic customizations that you can add to your mount along with mount armor. So this is a trophy that you can mount. It mounts, some trophies mount on the saddle. I don't know why I'm pointing to my shoulder. This is where the shadows go, apparently.
Yeah.
Or they can mount on the side, on the horse's flank, like you see here with this trophy.
Yeah, so again, like all rewards from the original first 2 weekends of the beta, including the 2 titles and the beta wolf pack will be available, as well as the Cry of Ashava mount trophy. And for the mount trophy, you have to be level 20 and kill Ashava. All classes
dia
will be
12 a
available,
14 novo beta.
and you'll be able to explore
Todas as
Fractured Peaks
classes
again,
liberadas,
from the,
galera.
2
Todas
beta
as classes
weekends that we had
liberadas.
beforehand. And of course, Ashava will be
Só
spawning
vai até level
much
20
more
dessa
often
vez.
in this Server Slam Weekend.
Não, se bem que tá só Play e Up level 20, mas não sei se vai até level 20 só.
Mas aí tem uma coisa que me ficou. Por que você tá falando a cada 3 horas?
A cada 3 horas o quê?
Huge news for all of this.
Deixaram
We will have a blog
a cada
that will be
3 horas.
going either live right now or live immediately after the broadcast for players to actually read about all this information. And that'll be available on Diablo4.com. So make sure to check out the blog, get all your information there, and jump in on our Server Slam weekend, March 12th through March 14th. It's another opportunity to play Diablo 4 before the launch, which is really great. And you can test all the new beta changes, which is really cool. And one other thing that I do want to note for at least PC players who are jumping into the Server Slam weekend, the team here has done some massive work on some of the PC optimization from the first 2
Lembrando, galera,
beta
hoje tem
weekends.
live de Path of Exile às
DLSS 3
19 horas, galera.
for NVR will also be available for people to try out in the Server Slam weekends.
Agora a gente vai até o level 20. E se você derrotar o boss, o World Boss, que vai aparecer a cada 3 horas, você ganha a montaria.
Ah, tá. Então, ó, galera, a cada 3 horas vai ter o World Boss a fazer. E quem derrotar ele vai ganhar a montaria. Vai ser uma nova skin aí pra você pegar aí, ó.
And really helping out with the game.
Na verdade, eu já comprei a versão Deluxe e já vou ganhar a montaria da hora. Mas ter mais opções é melhor, né?
Riker actually has a bunch of questions that he was asking his own community that we hear from chat and so forth. One question that we have been seeing that has come up within the community beforehand, and we'll start off with this one, which is how long will it take us to get to the Battle Pass? It's a question that a lot of people in the community have been talking about over the last week and a half, and I know that we wanted to talk about it a little bit more here.
Yeah, I think that there's a... So I've talked about this in the past. I think one thing I really want to emphasize is that when we think about the Battle Pass for the for Diablo 4...
Não sei, cara, tá muito cedo, são 90 minutos de live, tem mais uma hora pra eles falarem a novidade.
Players. We want to make sure that the players who are going through the Battle Pass, they're going to have a lot of content to consume, outside the Battle Pass. They're in all likelihood to finish everything in the Battle Pass before they finish all of the content within a season to season. So there's a ton of things to look forward to. We want to make sure that the Battle Pass as a result is balanced in such a way that players of all types and all play styles are going to be able to get a chance to actually complete this this Battle Pass over the course of time. Our goal is that if you want to start to engage with this, I want to make sure that you are compelled to go through all of it as you're playing and just having a good time getting all of these rewards.
O passe de batalha mensal é por season, sabe?
Right, I know you have questions, so I want to make sure that you get some questions in and so forth. And I guess we'll just go back and forth for this. It'll make it easier for these two guys.
80 horas que leva pra completar o passe, 3 meses, pô, impossível tu não completar.
Sounds great. Well, so first off, something that you were, I think, touching upon earlier, and correct me if I misunderstood.
Mas ele usou uma expressão que é
tipo, challenge do que isso vai ter uma progressão no jogo para dizer que a coisa está that can be turned into the Nightmare Dungeons.
Entendi, conforme você vai evoluindo no jogo, vai desbloqueando o passe. É normal, todo passe é assim.
There's over 115 or so side dungeons available in the baseline Diablo.
Mas tipo assim, agora que vai ter um reset, porque todas as vezes que você vai ligar no Apoia, você pega tipo uma nova lista de challenges, você computa para matar o gratuito do Apoia. O que acontece? Você completa certos desafios do jogo para realizar isso. O quanto de você vai estar compartilhando mesmo é mais desafiador, demora mais tempo, por isso você tem que demorar 3 meses, entendeu? Vai estar compartilhando
every with regard to this system in particular. So that is the idea. Is we do want to rotate through these from season to season while we're looking to introduce other ideas. Yeah.
Cool. And I got a question here from, I'm not going to butcher Twitch names, guys. I do this every stream. From a Twitch user in chat, do you have any plans to keep interest for people who don't plan to play in seasons?
So we are going to be making on a regular basis part of our live updates. We're not quite ready to talk about all of our seasonal plans and all of our post-launch plans yet, but I will say this, that we're going to be having a lot of really rich and interesting content updates for our seasonal players, but we're still be making balance changes and adding new
vai ser por temporada, Ronaldo, exatamente.
Unique items and things of that nature for players who are playing in the Eternal Realm, the place where you will be able to never have to worry about a character reset or do any of those things.
A temporada durou 3 meses, pô. Não vai ser tão caro, então. R$50 para 3 meses? Por exemplo, Diablo Immortal é R$30 por mês. Olha a diferença.
Really cool stuff.
All right. So one thing that I noticed in the December press beta to the public beta was that changes were made to the skill tree. There were like new passive skills, there were new paths made amongst the passive nodes. So I'm wondering, was the skill tree designed in such a way that you can, over the course of seasons or expansions, add new passive or active skills?
Yes. So the skill tree really that we have for Diablo 4 at launch really is just the beginning for these classes. We are going to be looking for new opportunities to create more playstyles within each of the classes. We'll be adding new passives, new skills in the future. These are things. It is likely that these kinds of updates, particularly of like new passives, like new nodes, new things in the skill tree, are more likely to happen as part of our our future larger like expansion size updates, rather than things that might be happening as part of seasons. We have lots of interesting customization options.
Vou facilitar para você ficar resetando a skill.
We've been seeing this question a lot, and I've been seeing it in chat as well, and there's, I think, some confusion in regards to altars of Lilith, how those will work in between.
O objetivo antes era dificultar, conforme você ficava mais forte, mais dificultava para você mexer na sua árvore de skills. Agora vamos facilitar para mesmo se estiver muito forte, você pode ficar resetando o tempo inteiro quando você quiser.
We're going to contribute to their renown total within each of the zones.
Well, and give permanent character power as well.
I'm going to get there.
Okay.
So there's two purposes really that the Altars of Lilith have. They have this larger collectible feature where you want to kind of go get all of them for the stat points that you just called out, and then they also provide the renown. So renown is reset on a seasonal basis. So when you start a new character, your renown score goes back down to 0. You'll have to go and finish side dungeons, go do side quests, go find Altars of Lilith, go do these things in order to kind of get that renown back up to unlock all of those benefits. Now, you don't need to go do all of that content in the zone to max out your renown bar. There's actually way more activities that grant renown than you actually need to complete in order to finish going through and filling up all of the renown and getting all 5 tiers of the rewards. When it comes to the stat gains, so basically,
Henrique, eu devo começar mais 19 horas, Henrique.
Also have another purpose, in that when you find one, they give you a stat boost that's supposed to apply to your character and all characters in that realm. The way that's going to work is that once you've collected that stat boost from a specific Altar of Lilith, that stat effect is going to propagate out to other characters of that game type. So basically, hardcore is going to have its own progression for this, where it's like if you were playing a hardcore character at launch and you go and you do all these things, those stat boosts you collect will propagate to your hardcore characters you would make in the seasonal realm. And the same is true for players who are playing in the normal realm, playing in the normal game mode. All the stat boosts they're unlocking via the Altars of Lilith will also unlock for their seasonal characters in the future, such that players don't need to go and collect every Altar of Lilith with every new season, but you do want to get some of them. They do still grant experience, and they do give you some bonus towards your boost towards your renown. But there's not the sense that you need to go and like do every single one of them every single time. We want that to be a really fun experience for players to engage with it, particularly while they're exploring Sanctuary for their first couple times at most.
Já peguei duas, Henrique.
Have that bit of fun. Otherwise, players can choose to engage with them or ignore them as they go into their seasonal playthroughs in the future.
Right. So characters, if you unlock a permanent stat boost in Season 1, that will persist into Season 2.
Eu vou ter que dar uma saidinha, porque chegou gente aqui em casa, mas eu acho que vou voltar ainda volto antes a live terminar.
Não, de boa. Depois eu vou jogar um pouquinho mais e tu me ajuda, hein?
Slots. Is there any other kind of item types where either you can only get this item in this zone, this location, or is there some greater propensity for some items to drop off certain monsters, anything like that?
So we have a number of different creatures in the game that have a chance to drop particular things. World bosses, for example, have a really good chance to drop Scattered Prism, which is the crafting material you need in order to add sockets to items in the game. And then there are certain content types that have the chance to grant certain materials, like Fiend Rose, for example, really only shows up in Helltide areas. And the only way to raise the level of your glyph is by going through and doing nightmare dungeons. When it comes to item farming, we also, and I've talked a little bit about this in the past, but I think it's good to remind people, and also just to keep talking about it, right? It's a new mechanic. And that is that when you're fighting creatures of a certain monster family, like zombies or skeletons with their respective families, those monsters have a higher chance to drop certain kinds of items. It's actually a bonus chance to drop certain item types that happen in the background. So it's not like if an item...
Tem que ser na hora de combate, entendeu? Skills com itens e jogabilidade. Porque pode deixar resetar de graça até, não tem problema nenhum. Quando você estiver lá na frente, level 50, você não vai ficar resetando, porque você vai ter um monte de item roubado de várias habilidades, e aí você vai resetar, tipo, vai perder todos os seus itens. Imagina, eu tenho 3 itens de bola de fogo, que melhoram a skill bola de fogo. Eu não posso mais resetar minha habilidade e mudar a skill bola de fogo só porque eu peguei um item novo, que eu vou usar o item novo e vou abandonar os outros 3. Entende? Então a dificuldade vai estar muito mais em você conciliar os seus itens com a forma que você distribui as skills do que em ficar usando dinheiro ou outra coisa para resetar. Eu acho esse negócio de resetar a habilidade bem tranquilo. Eu acho ruim como é feito no Path of Exile, que é mega difícil de ficar resetando as habilidades.
So these are the sorts of things that, like, as you're diving deeper into like the hunting gameplay, the item hunting
gameplay, tem que facilitar a vida do jogador, não tem que dificultar.
That's not the end. There's a lot more we're going to be doing as the game continues to mature and as we're going into like our post-launch period. But you know, we'll talk about that when the time's right.
Fair enough.
This one is kind of tied to some of the Server Slam stuff that we just announced, which is, will there be any additional changes made to the game after the Server Slam weekend, like what was done during the beta?
No, I mean, we announced that the game has gone gold. The Server Slam is, you're testing a version of the game that is very close to the launch version of the game. That's why it's so effective as a Server Slam. Now, of course, as a live service game, we're going to be continuing to take feedback exactly like you saw during the beta, after the game is launched, and making changes and making improvements based on data and player feedback.
Awesome.
All right, overlay map versus mini-map. Mini-map is a little map in the top right corner. Overlay is what we had in the past in D2, where you have this semi-transparency of the large-scale map over your actual gameplay. D4 does not have an overlay map. A lot of people are asking for it. What's the reason for no overlay?
Yeah, so when you're playing through an action RPG and you're playing through that core loop, you're basically switching between 2 modes of behavior, right? You're killing monsters or you're navigating. And you're switching back and forth between those really quickly. And so it can be helpful to have that be as fast as possible so that you can I just killed those monsters. Okay, where am I going to go? Is there an objective to the left or right? Right? And so the overlay map is very effective at doing that. In fact, it's so effective that it's up there's no reason to ever close it. And so there are a lot of solutions that we've seen different games do in terms of like trying to mitigate
Eles vão mostrando, né, a gameplay conforme eles vão falando.
Fading areas around the player or other things like that.
Só ficar aí sentado falando é foda.
We're trying to keep the combat and navigation spaces as clean as possible. By separating them a little bit more. And so that's why you see the mini-map, you see the pin system on the map, you see, in certain cases, edge of screen indicators on the mini-map. We want to add more of those kinds of things.
Dá para você desenhar no minimap para mostrar o que você quer aí pro seu grupo.
Our goal is to make sure that players, when they're going back and forth between combat mode and
marcar alguma coisa no minimap para poder, ó, gente, quero ir para cá. Mas assim, eu acho que é isso que eles estão falando.
Hassle. So we're going to be continuing to look at this feedback. For launch, you won't have an overlay map. We're trying to make that experience as smooth as possible. But we're going to continue to listen to player feedback on this point.
All right.
We have a question saying, are all dungeons going to be single floor iterations with halls like traversing, or are we going to get like maybe multi-level dungeons or anything that brings like elevation or depth and so forth into those?
You know, it's interesting that one of the things that we did in Diablo 4 that's really cool is that you don't have to load between dungeon floors. An interesting effect of that is that you might not always notice when you're going down a floor into a lower floor. There is there are staircases and there are sort of moments where that shows up, and there's UI that appears that shows up. But in many cases, our dungeons do have multiple floors, and because it's so seamless, you don't always notice. Now, in terms of when you think back to Diablo 1 and adventuring down through the cathedral, and it's this very deep dungeon. Our dungeon tech can certainly do that too, and that's certainly something that could be a cool option for the future.
Awesome.
All right. With regards to PvP, is there any kind of instancing to separate out solo players versus groups, or are we going to see like 4-man squads ganking lonely players?
Yeah, you will see 4-man squads ganking lonely players. I want to make sure I'm really clear about this.
Tá falando do PVP agora.
The fields of hatred that we have in Diablo 4 are not a place for honor. They're a place for slaughter. So if you go into those spaces, you need to be mindful that you are entering a chaotic realm of danger and threat. That's the fantasy. That's what we're trying to do. Now, players who go into these spaces might also be fortunate and find that there's a number of other players that are trying to peacefully farm up, in various resources while they're fighting there, and not actually be interested in engaging in PvP immediately. That also is a situation you might occasionally find yourself in. Maybe you decide that you want to take advantage of them, and you show up and decide that you want to go and gank those players and take their things. Greed gets the best of us all at some point in time. But I want to make it really clear that there are things in place in terms of how we bucket players by level and things like that to ensure that you're not always going up against like really
fazer grupo durante
PvP. Low level. But in terms of like I'm walking in this space, is there any guarantee that there aren't 3 people somewhere roaming around this area looking to gank lonely people like me? The answer is there is no mechanic in place to prevent that from occurring. So you need to be mindful of that when you're walking around here. Go in there with friends, or walk in and be prepared to occasionally die. Especially when you immediately walk into a field of hatred. If you were to immediately get killed by other players, there's actually no real penalty for you in that case. That you haven't started to acquire any of the PvP resources in that zone yet anyway. So they have nothing to gain from killing, and you have nothing to lose as a result of that death. So, yeah, things to experiment with, but go in with the right set of expectations.
But there is some pseudo matchmaking to stop like level 100 players ganking level 25 players?
That's correct. There is some bucketing in place to make sure that doesn't occur.
I would add, too, that the fields of hatred are fairly large areas.
Yes.
So there are some tools to avoid, the same group of players repeatedly killing you. There are also two fields of hatred, so you can move between fields of hatred. Mm-hmm. And there are things like elixirs that can allow you to be more evasive or get away from situations where you feel like you're at a disadvantage. There are also, when you think about the fields of hatred mechanic, you're collecting these shards of hatred, mm-hmm. And you're refining them so that you can turn them in for rewards. The locations that you can do that, there are several locations, typically active at a time. So you can sort of do some strategizing about where there might be enemy players and where it might be safe.
That's right. When an altar is being used to purify those shards of hatred into red dust, you'll actually see a notification on your map letting you know where that's actually occurring. So if you see that there's a lot of activity in the northwestern part of the zone, maybe that's a great time to sneak over to the southeastern side and try to quietly and quickly cleanse some red dust of your own. Because once it's cleansed, you can't lose it, you don't drop it.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. We have a lot of questions related to like seasonal stuff and battle pass stuff. I just want to note that we actually are our next live stream in May, in early May, soon TM, will be actually focusing a little bit on our seasonal structure as well as battle pass and so forth. So we're actually going to leave those comments specifically for that. I keep looking down at the monitor and the people in production behind me keep going, Adam, what's wrong with you? That's just me. In regards to other quick questions that we do have, I'm going to just lightning off a few questions that have been coming up. These are kind of related, I would say, but one is a co-op on PC. Have we looked at doing something like that? And then separately, mouse and keyboard on console. Is that something that we've also looked into?
No couch co-op on PC, no mouse and keyboard on console.
There you go. Mainly because, as you guys know, PC, like the account structure on Battle.net and having 2 accounts at the same time on one PC is a little difficult. And then on console, right now it's just controller play. And, as we get past launch and so forth, we'll look at more.
Será que o grande anúncio já foi o lance do novo beta? Ou será que teremos aí a classe nova? Acho que ainda vai vir no grande anúncio no final, né? Não vamos deixar o grande anúncio pro começo.
Oh, yes.
Mas só já ter o novo beta foi maneiríssimo.
About collecting, killing monsters, collecting loot, screwing around with that loot to do fun things and make it get more performance out of it, modifying those things, looking for the right affix. Yeah, we're going to absolutely continue to be just changing some of the crafting options, modifying them, providing new options that don't exist right now, building upon things we already have in place. You can expect to see a lot of things. Like Diablo 4 is a live service because it's a rich bed of opportunities to continue to refine, change, update, and modify the systems we have in place right now. So yeah, you'll definitely see more crafting features over the course of time.
Awesome. Last few small questions. People have been asked about ray tracing because we mentioned the NVIDIA DLSS 3 will be coming in. The ServerSlam ray tracing is coming after launch. It's something that we had talked about earlier. Let's see. This is an interesting question. If you're on your mount, can you actually pick up crafting materials and stuff like that while you're on your mount in the overworld?
There are a number of simple actions you can perform when you're on a mount. I believe right now you can pick up herbs when you're mounted. Yes.
Cool. I'm trying to see if we have. The chat's moving incredibly fast. A lot of people are talking about WASD movement right now. We don't have any plans for incorporating that. It's something that we may look into post-launch or whatnot from our end. Cool. I think we got a decent amount of questions in. Talked about this, the beta learnings, and of course all the information about Endgame and the ServerSlam.
Yeah. On you mentioned WASD movement. So no, WASD movement will not be in the game at launch, but in the ServerSlam, do check out the additional control customization options that we added.
Yes.
They are referenced on the blog, and we want to continue to
acho que vão falar mais alguma coisa, cara.
more
São
ways
90 minutos de live.
customize the control
Só
scheme.
passaram
in the way they're
50.
thinking of. So something that we're thinking
Mais
about.
40 minutos para eles só ficarem rolando.
So thank you guys again, and thank you Riker for joining us this week. I know you've had a opportunity to play through the game quite a lot. We've just stuck him in a room. He's really just played the game a ton this week. But we really appreciate everyone tuning in.
Na verdade não, já tem 1h20, né? Só tem mais 10 minutos, acabou já a live.
Live stream. Again, our next live stream will be
esse foi o grande anúncio
in
mesmo.
May, early May, and we'll be talking a little bit about our season structure as well as our battle pass.
Tô viajando, achei que começou 3h30.
A few other things that we did want to call out in terms of Diablo 3, we have season 28 currently going on right now. It's an awesome season. Highly recommend checking it out.
Yeah, check it out.
If you haven't. And then, of course, with Diablo Immortal, they just came out with a big update about a week or two ago that added a new PvP system into the game. So make sure to check that out if you haven't as well. For Diablo 2, we do want to announce one quick thing as well, which is the Diablo 2 Season 4. Diablo 2 Season 4 will actually begin on May 4th.
Dia 4 de maio.
So we did want to get that out so people can plan their calendars, because it's always been a fun, exciting time within D2R for people to do the ladder race as they kind of get prepped for it, take time off, call off from work. We'll give you the doctor's note. Perfect. So. But yes, thank you guys again for tuning in to the Diablo 4 Developer Update live stream. And we really appreciate you guys and appreciate the feedback. And thank you again, Riker.
Thank you so much for
joining us. Yeah. Any parting words from anyone?
Yes.
Well, we would like you to slam the server.
Yeah, do that.
Yes.
You must be level 20.
Esse beta é para todo mundo ou é para quem comprou, sabe, Sandro Costa?
The interesting thing is that we tested the Ashava fight at level 20 to make sure that it was doable.
Yes.
Vai ter o Ashava a cada 3 horas.
But we did want to check to make sure it was doable. They were like, okay, go on.
It is quite challenging. If you are having a lot of trouble with it, you can always go down to difficulty level.
That's true. You could always go down to World Tier 1.
That's right.
Yes. Okay. And Woody Joe, we expect you to solo it. For sure. And again, you can pre-purchase Diablo 4. We have a QR code up there. We have a deluxe and ultimate version that are available for the digital version that can give you early access up to 4 days before launch.
Open beta, né?
Yeah. Thank you guys again and really appreciate it. And one other thing. We are going to be raiding into 2 Diablo partners, both from YouTube and on Twitch.
E aí, galera, ficou alguma dúvida? Vocês têm alguma dúvida?
Check them out. And thank you guys again. Really appreciate it. And thank you from everyone on the Diablo team.
Podem perguntar aí. E aqui acabou. Aqui acabou. Tá vendo? Vai ganhar novamente essa skin do lobinho. Vai ter o achava a cada 3 horas. Diminuíram o level do servidor. Vai ser level 20. Você tem que matar o achava no level 20. O player roop é até level 20, que minha câmera tá na frente. Vão ter todas as classes disponíveis. Vai ser do dia 12 ao 14. Vai ser de novo a mesma zona, Fractured Peaks. E vai ter a experiência na história do prólogo e ato 1, igual era antes. Não sei se dessa vez eles vão liberar para você fazer aí aquelas missões mais para a esquerda, que liberava a maestria do Bárbaro e do Druida. Espero que sim, que dessa vez eles liberem a maestria do Bárbaro e do Druida, que não liberaram no beta passado. Dia 12 e dia 14. Quem já jogou o beta vai querer jogar novamente? Vocês vão querer jogar novamente? Eu vou. Pode ter certeza que dia 12 ao dia 14 vamos jogar novamente. Vamos criar aí novas builds, novos testes. E dessa vez vamos focar mais nas classes que a gente vai jogar em junho. Que vai ser Necromante e Bárbaro. Vão ser as classes principais que eu vou jogar. Talvez eu jogue com todas as classes. Agora, em maio, no beta. Mas em junho, eu vou... Desculpa, mas... Em junho eu vou focar em Necromante. E classe secundária vai ser meu Bárbaro. Galera. Eu esperava mais, de verdade. Esperava mais um grande anúncio. E não só um novo beta. Mas tá bom, né? Vai meio que matar um pouco a ansiedade aí que a galera tá pra jogar novamente. O problema é que, pô, só deixar até level 20 é complicado. Podia deixar mais coisa, podia ter outra parada. Podia botar todo mundo pra começar level 50 já, sei lá. Mas tá bom, né? Tá bom, melhor que nada. E vocês, galera, alguma dúvida? A hora é essa, mano. Mandem suas dúvidas. Caraca, live... Propaganda aqui.
And D4 as well, of course.
E a live voltou. Pronto, deixa aqui na tela mesmo.
But
Caraca!
like I said, this can
Pronto. Agora sim. Achei que tinha mais alguma coisa, mas não. Literalmente essa é a última página da live. Cara, eu achei assim, é o mais do mesmo, né? O bom é que vai dar pra ver, sabe o quê? Vai dar pra gente testar o que eles mudaram. O que foi, filha? Tá bom, pega lá. O bom é que vai dar pra gente testar o que eles mudaram, porque eles claramente bufaram o Bárbaro e bufaram o Druida. E nerfaram a Rogue. Eles deram um pequeno nerf na Rogue e bufaram outras paradas. Deram vários nerfs na Sorcery, no raio. Em algumas skills, bufaram outras skills de raio e bufaram outras paradas de fogo. E o Necromante, eles nerfaram praticamente tudo. Deram um buffzinho só pra dizer que deram. Mas teve bem mais nerfs. Então vai ser uma forma de gente jogar esse beta pra ver como tá o equilíbrio das classes. Porque acredito eu que depois desse beta... Não sei se eles vão mudar novamente para o início do jogo. Pode ser que eles mudem novamente mais coisas. Mas acho que já é uma forma de falar, ó, esse beta é para vocês verem a classe que vocês vão jogar, que é desse jeito que elas vão ficar na hora que vocês começarem. Qual classe?
Mas eu não vou mentir.
Fala.
Eu esperava bem mais, cara. Um anúncio bem mais foda do que só um novo beta.
Grande anúncio. Não achava que era só um beta ali. Mas tá bom. Eu já imaginava que não ia ser classe nova. Classe nova eles já prometeram que... Quer dizer, eu ouvi rumores que eles prometeram que vai ter uma classe nova aí só depois da primeira season. A primeira season começa daqui 15 dias após o lançamento, lá pro dia 20, né? Que o lançamento oficial é dia 6, dia 5 no Brasil, mas dia 6. E aí dia 20, 21 vai começar a season. E aí vai durar 3 meses. Então só depois de 3 meses que deve lançar a nova classe, acredito que seja o Paladino. Então, vamos aguardar. Eu esperava que eles falassem alguma coisa da história do jogo. Porque tem rumores aí que o último boss não é a Lilith. Parece que vai ter uma parada que no final você vai acabar brigando tanto com a Lilith quanto com qual é o nome do anjo? Esqueci o nome agora dele. Tá batendo os dois. A verdade é essa. Porque parece que ambos meio que querem dominar o mundo da sua maneira, né? A Lilith pelo caos e o anjo aí Através do fanatismo, né? Ele quer se livrar daquilo ali, ele quer destruir o local também que ele criou junto com a Lilith.
Bom, o que pode tornar isso bem interessante foi que, as coisas que eu achei legal, eles falaram que tem mais de 100 dungeons completamente distintas e diferentes. Eu espero que isso seja verdade, porque é foda se o endgame vai se basear basicamente em tudo em dungeon, então, tipo, o endgame vai ser só dungeon, pelo que eles disseram. Quanto ao sistema de Paragon. Isso também foi interessante, porque eles não botaram só uma coisa simples que você compra uns status e você vai até aquele negócio lendário. Você vai procurar, caçar, dropar aqueles, que eu esqueci o nome, as joiazinhas que eu esqueci o nome, que pode manipular e modificar sua build completamente, como fosse, literalmente uma trilha de passivo que você coloca a gema de suporte do Patch of EXE. Isso eu achei legal. Isso eu achei bastante legal. E Chasing Items, pra quem joga Patch of EXE, é tipo Mage Blood Red Hunter. São coisas que tu ou se planeja pra tu farmar a liga inteira e conseguir aquele item, ou é um item que muda completamente seu gameplay. É como se fosse a quest que você tem no jogo, quando você já zerou o jogo, quando você já fez tudo no jogo, e você fala, a partir de agora eu vou atrás desse item. Então, tipo, é uma coisa muito difícil, nem todos os jogadores conseguem, então sempre vai ser um objetivo a cada season do Diablo, isso é legal. E deixa o jogo muito bom.
E lembrando, galera, que tudo que você pega durante a season, ela passa pra sua nova... pra quando o jogo sai a season, né? E depois que acaba a season, você pode escolher se você quer começar outra season jogando ou quer ficar jogando no mundo aberto com o teu personagem antigo com os novos itens que você conseguiu com o personagem novo. Então, por exemplo, vamos supor que você tem um personagem antigo boladão. E aí a nova season lança itens novos. E você quer botar esse item novo para sua build, porque vai combar perfeitamente com o seu estilo de jogo, com a magia que você joga. Você cria o personagem novo, na season nova, joga com ele, pega aquele item, e aí quando você vier para a season antiga, você só acrescenta as coisas melhores da season nova do seu personagem, deixando ele cada vez mais bolado. Chega um momento que o personagem principal vai estar extremamente absurdo. Entendeu? A ideia é essa. Eu vou fazer um vídeo mostrando um resumo de tudo que rolou nessa live. Legal? Pode deixar que eu vou fazer um vídeo mostrando um resumo de tudo que rolou nessa live. Mas é isso, galera. É isso. Live daqui a pouco. São 4h30. Live às 7 horas de Patch of EXE na nova temporada aí. Estamos montando uma build de espectro muito absurda. E a gente vai fazer todos os últimos boss aí de Patch of EXE com essa nova build para mostrar que a build funciona e fazer os vídeos mostrando a build. E o Afana tá aqui comigo me ajudando. Basicamente é isso, cara. Basicamente é isso. Agora vai ser novo beta, em maio, dia 12 a 14. Você vai ganhar novamente, para quem não participou dos beta antigos, tem mais uma chance de você ganhar o pack de Wolf lá, né? O lobinho que você carrega, nova skin. Vai ter uma skin nova de cavalo, que vai ser top. Só quem matar o boss achava no level 20. Antes não tinha skin para quem matasse o boss. Agora quem matar o boss nesse novo beta, no level 20, vai ganhar essa skin. Tá bom? Além disso, vai ter... Só até level 20 mesmo, isso aí. Mesma coisa. E pode jogar todas as classes dessa vez. Alguma dúvida, galera? Mandem aí suas dúvidas. Senão a gente encerra por aqui. E aí, Afana, alguma dúvida?
Não, mas se tiver, eu vou comentar lá no teu vídeo quando lançar.
Não, show de bola. Cara, eu provavelmente vou jogar dessa vez aí. Não vou jogar todas as classes. Não pretendo jogar todas as classes. Vão ser menos dias. Vai ser 3 dias, né? 12, 13, 14. Se eu jogar todas as classes, eu acabo não ficando bem em todas as classes. Então eu pretendo focar em uma classe só. E de repente jogar um pouquinho com o outro. Para aproveitar o máximo. Pegar o máximo de itens lendários possíveis da classe principal, que é o Necromante. E testar para ver como é que ele ficou aí com esses nerfs que fizeram grandes nerfs no Necromante. E ver como é que ficou. Ver como é que ficou aí. E provavelmente eles fizeram mais mudanças do que eles mostraram. Entendeu? Porque tava algumas coisas bem quebradas mesmo no Necromante. É isso, galera. Ó, vai ter algo pay to win, porque vi que o pessoal falando, não. 0 pay to win, Dante Maia. O máximo que vai ter aí é a compra do passe de batalha e algumas mini transações que eles chamam, né? Que são compras dentro do jogo. Mas nenhuma dessas mini transações Microtransações, que eles chamam. Nenhuma das microtransações ou do passe de batalha tem nada que beneficie a sua jogabilidade. São só cosméticos, por exemplo, skin, mudança aí de rótulo que aparece em volta do personagem, bandeirinha, emote, coisas do tipo, entendeu? De repente uma abertura do jogo diferente, esse tipo de coisa. Então, 0 pay to win para Diablo 4. Vai continuar na druida, Max? Melhoraram muito, cara. Eu quero muito ver como é que vai ser essa build druida de mascote. Parece que eles maximizaram bastante o dano dos bichinhos do druida. De repente vale a pena fazer a build druida. Tem um item do druida que você pega e você faz os lobos do druida virarem lobisomens. Pô, mano, já melhorava muito o dano. Só que o próprio lobo já era muito fraco, então não melhorava tanto. Agora, de repente, esse item fica muito importante, cara. Muito importante mesmo. Eu não sei se vai ter a mesma taxa de drop que tinha no primeiro beta. Talvez eles tirem isso, porque passou uma falsa impressão que o jogo seria muito fácil. No primeiro beta passou uma falsa impressão que o jogo seria muito fácil, com drops lendários o tempo inteiro, toda hora, muito ouro. E aí talvez eles tirem isso. Diminua a taxa de drop, diminua a taxa de itens, a taxa de ouro. E já mostre a nova árvore de excelência melhorada, facilitada, né? E é isso, até mais tarde, galera. Live mais tarde. Eu sou o Venom. Valeu. Falou. É nóis.